I haven't stopped. 20 years, a lot of menus. If you don't believe me, I just stole one the other night from Doug Katz's new restaurant, Jug, which looks amazing. It's not even open, but it's going in the collection. I know I'm a horrible person. I really when I wrote that story, people were like, "Oh my God, you're stealing menus from chefs and money from chefs and restaurants," and and I get that. I'm horrible, but I have to do it. So a couple years ago, the way this story started, I was chatting with my editor Vince over at Scene magazine, and I mentioned my menu collection. I've had it since I started writing in about 20 years ago. And he's like, "How many menus do you think you have?" And I was like, "Geez, I never really counted, but I think about 1,000. And after he picked his jaw up off the floor, he looked at me and he did what every great editor does. He told me to write about it. And I never really thought much about the collection as a whole. I always enjoyed thumbing through it and looking at individual menus, but I never kind of took a step back and said, what can I get out of this? What can we learn from my collection? And so that's exactly what I did. So I dug out my menu collection, which is in a giant, flabby accordion file. Those things that they never seem to end. They just are literally, it's incredible. You could just keep going. So mine has kept going and going and going. And so I really spent a lot of time with it. I mean, when you have to write 3,500 words on a topic, you spend a lot of time looking for things and themes and broader themes, and that's exactly what I did. So I'll tell you how it started. At the risk of sounding like a boomer, and I know that's a right, ducks. Things were really different when I started writing about food in Cleveland. I mean, we're talking about 2001. There were no restaurant websites. I didn't have a smartphone. Smartphones weren't around. My very first review was Goodman Sandwich in Parma, amazing corned beef restaurant, and it was for the Free Times. Both of those are long gone, lost, as we say, to the annals of history. But I still have the menu. So, like I said, 2001, think about it. No smartphones, can't take a picture of the food, no Instagram, no flaming Yelp reviews, none of that. Scene or Free Time, we didn't even have online publications. If you wanted to read me, you picked up a physical paper. I mean, imagine that. It's crazy, I know. So I typically write restaurant reviews often days, weeks, and even sometimes months after I eat at this restaurant. So it's really, really, really helpful to have the menu with me. It's not just about the food I ate. It's about the food I didn't eat. It's about the descriptions. It's about the prices. It's about the cocktails, the drinks, the desserts, all of it. It's important. It's helpful. I need it. And so my only options back then were to sit there like a little scribe and transcribe the whole thing. Run to the bathroom like some people used to do and take notes, or steal it. I chose the latter. Much easier. So I got really good at stealing menus. I mean, really creative, really good. We're not talking about, these days, every restaurant has that little stack of paper takeout menus by the door. That's not how it used to be. Delivery wasn't that big of a deal back then. So I'm talking these big, these laminated beefs, these multi-page things. I mean, I remember jamming giant things. Now, they placemats. I hate to say it, but I've even got one of those really fancy leather-bound menus that you'd find at a steakhouse, or at least I found at a steakhouse. You might not have found it after I was there because I have it. And so, to walk away with a menu, it helps to start with an extra menu. And that's really where the whole ploy begins, So when a host, walks you over to your table with two menus, it's kind of hard for when she comes back and sees there's only one. So you got to start with an extra one. Groups, totally easy. Nobody's counting menus after 4 or 5 menus. They just put them in a stack, walk away. So there's a lot, part of the hard thing about this is starting with a new one, an extra one. And so there's a lot of ways you can do that. Obviously, just grab one at the host stand on your way to the bathroom, or you say, I want to take another look at the dessert menu, and they bring it back to you. And or if it's the drinks menu, it's super easy because you are always drinking. Not really. And then, of course, once you have it, it's just a matter of hiding it. So you sit on it, you put it behind your back, you put it under your magazine, you put it in a newspaper, and then it's just a matter of sneaking out the door. pants, bootleg, purse if you're with a female, knapsack, all that. So, once you've got it, you're out the door. So, like I said, I spent a lot of time with this collection, and I don't always do that because to me, when I'm not thinking about it, it's just a collection of menus. But when I started writing this story, I started kind of like looking and of course going back. It's always fun to go back to an old restaurant menu, and then you start seeing broader themes. And I know it sounds like hyperbole, but restaurant menus offer nothing short of like a chronology of history and culture, and in mine, local history and culture, because mine, 99% of them are Cleveland restaurants. Of course, when I travel, I also steal restaurants, menus. That, by the way, that's all I steal. I mean, like, I don't steal anything else. Like, if you're looking at me like, no, that's where my misdemeanors start and end. So obviously, menus show, the obvious thing is like, oh my God, we used to eat different foods, and food is trendy, and menus are a great way to see what we used to eat. But like I said, I mean, much, much bigger things. So, for example, I don't know, are they going, oh, that's funny. I forgot all about that. So these are just some of my menus. And you'll see probably some of them had notes on them. So what I typically do is as soon as I get to the car, I'll scribble some notes on the menu, maybe about some of the dishes I had, or atmosphere, or just general reflections or whatever. And it's funny, if you look back at some of the old ones, you find things like jacket required, like I would write, or no smoking. Can you imagine? There were cash only, other than Geraci's, it's ridiculous. That people, didn't take credit cards and all that. So these are kind of larger cultural things that obviously that change, and restaurants have obviously been a real big kind of marketer of this kind of change. Menus also, I mean, you'll see here, they're like clothing in fashion. They change, just the physical way they look. We used to have big multi-page bound volumes. Then you got the laminated menus. Then you got the large broadsheets, like the New York Times used to be. Placemats are really popular now. Also really popular, of course, are the chalkboard style menus everyone has. By the way, really hard to steal. Tried it. So within the menu, and you'll see this too. I mean, look, we used to have. It's funny, like. I think for 150 years, it was good enough to just say appetizer, soup, entree, salad, dessert. Like, it worked for so long. But then they started to have to mess with it. Small, medium, large. Perfect timing, by the way. Small, medium, large. Or bigs, mediums and shareables. And here's my favorite, and this is real. Gardens, oceans, fields, and ranches. As a way to, divide a menu, it's pretty silly, I know. But it happens. So believe it or not, also, menus did not always tell us where every single ingredient came from. Like, believe it or not, it used to say just like tomato or chicken or steak. But we've all noticed that for the past, 10 years or so, we've really started seeing this kind of farmer, rancher. And I know I'm making fun of it, but it's very important, and it's wonderful to know who those folks are and support them. But I don't know if I need to know where my chicken comes from. Just tell me, did it have friends? Right? Yeah. So our mushrooms come from Killback Valley. We know that now. Or Ohio City Farm, Miller Livestock, new creations. These are names that nobody would ever even have heard before or know about. And it's nice, I know. It's just a trend. So 20 years ago, I remember it was inconceivable for a restaurant to make and sell its own charcuterie. I mean, think about it. And the ones that did, it's funny, they did it very surreptitiously because it runs afoul of every health code law. Think about it. You're hanging meat in a back room and waiting for magic to take place. I remember, places like Lola and the places that really did it early did it in. I swear to God, they would move this bookshelf and you'd go in this back room and you'd be like, holy crap, there's meat hanging in here. Extra walk-in coolers, dry storage rooms. They would make it. But now, I mean, everybody's doing it, and they're doing it legally because they filed. They've done all the paperwork, and it's actually relatively simple to do right and to do well. And it's nice that they're everywhere. But now, like I said, they're as common as fried chicken sandwiches, which brings me to fried chicken sandwiches. Whatever happened to steak sandwiches? Remember when like every tavern menu had steak sandwiches? Now it's fried chicken sandwiches. You know what you wouldn't find 20 years ago? Bologna sandwiches, because people were embarrassed to serve them. Now, like, they're one of the hottest foods, fried bologna sandwiches. I'm sure you can go find one for lunch. They're amazing. They're wonderful. But that's like, it's an interesting thing. Caesar salads, blue cheese-topped wedge salads. These like come and go, like mom jeans. Like, they're hot. They're not. They're hot. Like, it's funny. Remember when like pizza was sold at pizza places? And now like every single place sells pizzas. They might call them flatbreads, by the way, so just a tip, it's a pizza. Tacos, don't get me started. Meatballs, braised short ribs, chicken and waffles. Who decided that Brussels sprouts are an appetizer? Like, when did that start? Right? Like, it was a side dish at Thanksgiving, and now, like, people are like, oh, they're so delicious, let's have it as an appetizer. No, fried cheese, that's an appetizer. I'm pretty sure. Chicken wings, appetizer, look it up. I wrote about it. So we've had, over the years, major trends, and I'm working on it right now. Flavor magazine, Scene puts it out every year. It's a glossy, food-filled magazine. It kind of looks back on the major trends of the year. And since this is also the end of a decade, we're doing a look back over the decade. So it's really helpful having all these menus because I'm really spending a lot of time with them, looking at some of these trends. And, we didn't have real barbecue in Cleveland until 8 years ago. I mean, we had barbecue. We have Cleveland-style barbecue. We have, ribs and chicken and that stuff. Wonderful, delicious, but to me, I like this slow smoke, Texas style, That didn't happen for a while. And then there was 2 years where we had like 6 new places. It happened with wood-fired pizza. Did not have one single place, I think, with real wood-fired pizza until we did. And now we have 6, say. Poutine, yeah, that's another big trend that came through. Breweries, obviously. Breweries exploded. It's not food, but it's liquid food. Fast casual, everything. I mean, that's really one of the biggest stories of, I think, the last 5 years, where it's the fast casual version of absolutely everything. And it makes my job a little less exciting, to be honest, because those places are a little less, fun to write about, but it's not going anywhere. Not just the food portion of the menu, obviously, that involves the drinks, too. Think about it. We used to drink, Bud, Miller, and Coors, then Sam Adams, Sierra Nevada, Market Garden, Great Lakes, of course, and now, literally, dozens and dozens of local craft beers on the menu. Also awesome, wonderful, local. We love it. We support it. Cocktails, martinis, Manhattans, and old fashions. Obviously, old days. Then we had to suffer through Cosmos, chocolate martinis, White Russians. And guess what? We're right back to martinis, Manhattans, and old fashions, which I like it. Brown booze, man, that really went out of style for a long time, but it is back, better than ever. And we have local stuff, too. So obviously I began stealing all these menus out of necessity, but I kept them out of kind of a sense of nostalgia. When I look at they're not just pieces of paper with food on them. Honestly, I know exactly where I sat, at Zinc when I ate there, outside, who I was with. The meal instantly comes back to me. My mind is like, it's porous like a sponge. It's awful. It's like I have a brain injury. My memory is so bad. But like, I pick up a menu. Again, Rose Angel, I remember sitting in the window with, Kim and the owner at the time, Marlon Kaplan, if you remember him, came over and was explaining. It instantly comes back to me. So that's why I keep these. These are all meals that I've had with family, with friends, with colleagues, old friends, dead friends, girlfriends, one wife, fortunately. So speaking of my wife, our first dinner date, I don't think I have the menu up there. Our first dinner date was at a place called Mosaica in Westlake. Kurt Stieber was an up-and-coming Cleveland chef, amazing, super talented. And as much as I hate to say it, that dinner, I knew I liked Kim, but we'd only been dating a short time. But I promise you that dinner was a test. Because I can't be with a picky eater. And honestly, it would have been a deal breaker if she said, I don't eat curry. I don't eat this, I don't eat that. And I'm like, well, nice knowing you. Because I can't do this job without somebody who's, willing to be a good sport. So I remember what we had that night. We had sweetbreads, we had escargot, we had red wine. I remember, there was all these things. And she ate them, she loved them. We're still together. The restaurant is long gone. So what does that tell you? I picked well. If you think it sounds like fun to cook your own steak on a superheated rock right in front of your face, you obviously never ate a steak on a stone. It was very gimmicky. I love these gimmicky places. They're fun. But that's imagine a room without ventilation. Everybody is cooking, they're little fatty pieces of steak on a really hot rock. It's splattering all over you. I think we came home, we burned our clothes, we went out to dinner, and so that was steak on a stone. Here's, I feel bad about this. After a particularly dreadful meal at a place called Hornblowers. You might remember it. It was on a ship permanently moored on Lake Erie. I think there's a business there now. So I wrote a review. We called it Taste Like Ship. And the restaurant, I shit you not, it closed, I think, 3 months later. No, it wasn't because of my review. It was because it was a horrible place to eat. And that's just it. And it was at a time when they were, some of those old restaurants were able to survive on inertia because they didn't have a lot of competition. And that's really kind of, it's so sad to see restaurants go after 40 years, the Rick's Cafes, the Gamekeepers, the you name it. But a lot of them, they were not that good. They were just there, and we didn't have a lot of choice. And so now we choose with our dollar. I mean, I won't get into, obviously, we have too many restaurants now. I agree wholeheartedly, but the cream does rise to the top, and so the ones that go. One of my all-time favorite reviews. This was bonkers. This place, and maybe some of you remember it. Johnny's Room 24. So this was a pretty ritzy, clubby, dim little steakhouse, but it was located in, I shit you not, 2 connected rooms of an otherwise closed motel. So the whole motel is closed, but these 2 rooms make up this little steakhouse called Johnny's Room 24. And it's still one of the craziest experiences I've ever had as a restaurant critic. And I missed it because it was really, really unique. So my menu collection chronicles not only the comings and goings of food trends, but the people who introduced them. So I remember Phil Davis. He is, really, the local pioneer of chicken and waffles. He didn't invent chicken and waffles, but he introduced it to Cleveland. And when he started, more than 15 years ago, it was at a weekly brunch buffet in the basement of the Civic in Cleveland Heights. Just a basement weekly brunch. I went there, and I'm like, holy moly, what is this? This is really cool. And, of course, it took off. And he went on to open Fill the Fire restaurants at Shaker Square. Then he moved downtown. Then he moved to Beechwood. And none of them lasted long, and it was a shame because it was a great concept. He just kind of kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, too big for the concept. And so, it's sad. But it's interesting to see the people behind some of these trends that we now take for granted. Similarly, or is it conversely? I don't know. I have menus, different menus that existed in the same location. So imagine this, and this happens to me all the time. I'm having dinner in a room that has been Mojo, Theory, Lago, Press, High and Dry. I'm sitting in the same place, just the restaurant changes around me, right? I should just stay there and wait. We're like, this won't be open long, but I'll just stay here because I got a good spot. Obviously, that happened over in Tremont, too. There's a place that has been home to Miracles, Oz, Sage, Bistro on Lincoln Park, Porcelli's, Legali's, Merchant Street, currently, and let's be honest, probably not for too long, Salsarito is over there now. Even I don't have all those menus. And I didn't go to all those restaurants because I have a pretty good sense of what's going to stick around and what's not going to stick around. And I'm not going to spend money on a place that's not going to stick around too long if I have, if I'm smart. When I was celebrating a major milestone, so there, free times was amazing and wonderful, and it ended, and then scene, then I switched over to scene, but there was some time in between. I don't know because I don't have a memory. But when I did, I think, start back up at scene, it was a major milestone. It was a lot of fun, and I did so by celebrating with one of the most extravagant meals I've had, and that was at Baricelli Inn. I mean, we went all the way. I mean, we're talking like champagne, caviar, tasting menus, dessert, champagne, wine, like the whole thing. It was so fun, and I'll never forget it. Baricelli closed 10 years ago, if you can believe it. I can't believe it. 10 years ago it closed. And I still have that menu, and I have notes on it, and I have notes on who I was there with, and it's really nice. Like some people keep concert tickets, I keep menus in that way. And that was really just a victim of, it's funny, I'll write about closings like Baricelli and people say, oh my God, it's so sad. Like, what a great restaurant. I'm so sad to lose it. And then I ask him, when was the last time you were there? Well, I think we went for our anniversary last year, I'm like, well, if you're only going once a year and it's one of your favorite restaurants, think about everybody else. So, these places are victims of too many restaurants. Baricelli Inn was obviously at the time when fine dining was on its way out. Now what we have mostly is finer dining where you can actually have great food in a much more casual setting, and people enjoy eating that way. Like I said, I have a pretty good radar when it comes to avoiding restaurants doomed to fail. For example, like I have never reviewed, I stayed away from places. There was a place called Mix in Cleveland Heights, Ivory Keys in Lakewood, Miami Nights in Westlake. We can all remember that story. Chow Bistro, we can all remember Chow Bistro in Ohio City. So none of these places I actually went to and ate because I kind of had a feeling that I'd be throwing money away, and I was right. But even I was surprised about Arcadian. This was a restaurant that took 3 years to build in Detroit Shoreway, and I probably spilled more ink on it than anybody, breathlessly talking it up, and oh my God, it's coming, and 3 years later it comes, and then 4 months after that it closed. 4 months after that it closed. It's wacky, and it with any closure, with any story is, there's two sides, there's three sides, and so depending on who you talk to, it's really hard to make your money back when your building costs probably $3 million. I'll just say that, right? I mean, like, how many pizzas do you have to sell to pay that nut? I don't know. So when I was writing this story for Scene, thumbing through all those old menus, and by the way, the article was called Menu Thief. I think, and it actually won the award that year, Best Food Writing for the Alternative Weekly. So out of all the food writing, all the alt weeklies, first place for the story, just me. Letting you know, it started dumb, my story, and Vince, my editor, just kept pushing me, as they do, and that's why it was a good story, the two of us. So when I was writing that story about old menus, I picked one up from Sergio's in University Circle, and I was instantly transported back to a small table in that small dining room, sitting with Chef Sergio Abramoff, and we're eating raw Nantucket-based scallops because he was so excited about them. He just got them in that day, and they were so sweet. They were like candy. You don't have to cook them, you just eat them. And Sergio is no longer with us, as some of you may know. We lost him a few years ago, and having that menu is pretty special. And there are other similar situations with people that are no longer with us that I have their menu. So there's a kind of a folder within my folder, and it's marked Honeymoon. And it contains more than a dozen different menus from this epic West Coast road trip that my wife and I took from San Francisco all the way up to Seattle, rented convertible, the whole deal. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't remember that we had the amazing chicken for two at Zuni in San Francisco, those amazing roadside burgers and fries at Taylor's Automatic Refresher in Napa, that amazing Spanish tortilla we had in McMinnville, Oregon, and like those amazing oysters we had in Seattle. It's all right there. Try doing that with a wedding album. You can't. I recently redid my office. It's a mess, and it's not big, and it's in my not big house. And so I'm always looking for opportunities to clear stuff out. And, in order to paint the walls, you have to move the furniture, and after you move the furniture, you have to empty it. And there is that giant albatross-like collection of menus. And it's funny, when I wrote this story, I talked to a lot of other restaurant critics, locally and nationally, and many of them do the exact same thing I do. They stole menus. Critics of a time stole menus because they had to, and many have similar collections to mine. Many of them, most of them, threw them away at some point. A move, a redo, maybe they're not writing about food anymore, they don't need them. Maybe they're just more mature than I am. But they all got rid of them. And I was just about to do the same. I was like, it's time to get rid of this collection of menus. And of course I didn't. I still have them, and I'll probably still have them, hopefully, because places like Bach aren't around anymore, but I have the menu. Thanks.
We have a few minutes here. Do you want to take
Sure.
some questions?
Yeah.
So probably just like 5 or 10 minutes are here. So if anyone has any questions about the guy who steals apparently just menus.
Just menus.
But I have my suspicions.
You should.
Anybody?
Lighters.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
hands up. And whenever it's a small room, so just repeat the question back. Take them.
See, it's funny. I was going to wear my shirt, and right now I would have been unbuttoning it. I know it sounds weird. And as I got to the last button and I opened my shirt, you would see, please do not ask me about my favorite restaurant. It's a shirt I made for myself because it's my least favorite question. It's the most popular question. It's my least favorite question. It's an irrelevant question, to be honest, because I don't have, favorites. I'm not allowed to have favorites, right? I just go to restaurants, and I keep going to them. The truth is, I don't eat out a lot for fun. We eat out a lot for work. I love to cook and garden and do all those things, so we really do not eat out meals for fun. But that said, there are places where I tend to spend my money when it's my money. Places like Fire over at Chica Square, Vero Pizza, I love. Anywhere in Tremont is always fun to bop around. Any of Zach Brule's restaurants. Albatross is probably where we spend most of our anniversaries because it's just heaven out there. Places that do it right. Good service, great food. Doesn't have to be fancy food, but places that are staying true to what their concept is. And, just mentioning service. I mean, service has gotten pretty bad over the years, and I think we can all agree. It's not because of millennials being lazy. It's because we have 30 times the restaurants we ever did, and everybody's fighting over the same workers, and it's very difficult. But places like Zach Brule restaurants do a great job training them, spending the money, taking the time, training them, teaching them about wine. So that's why those places tend to be pretty exceptional. You know that?
What's the next big trend you see in restaurants, especially in the culinary?
Well, the next big trend is obviously it's happening. It's fast casual. It's crazy. We didn't have it other than Chipotle. And I hate to the lazy way to explain it is the Chipotle version of Indian, the Chipotle version of this and that. I just recently read an article stating that in the last 3 years, this is Manhattan, 65% of all new leases are signed by fast casual restaurants. So it's not just here; it's everywhere. And maybe it's a response to the challenge of finding help, because you don't have to have much help with a fast casual restaurant. Price. And people like fast casual restaurants tend to give you more control in ordering. You can pick this and this and this and this, and people like that. But yeah, that's the next big trend, for sure. Hi.
Hi. I'm surprised to hear you say that we have too many restaurants.
Yeah.
And why is that? And why is that a problem, especially because restaurants are usually a big stimulus for economic development?
So, well, yes. The economic development thing, I think, is part of the problem, to be honest with you. Not in neighborhoods like Church Shoreway and in real neighborhoods. Fake neighborhoods like Pinecrest and Legacy and Crocker Park, where the developers are fighting each other for these restaurants who are, kind of the anchors for these developments. And it's odd because these people don't make a lot of money, right? And they're but they have to do the build out and they have to do that. But I'm getting aside, off my. So too many restaurants for sure. Why? Well, just think about it. We have replaced a lot of our traditional entertainment with eating out. So instead of going to movies and plays and reading and doing all that stuff, we're eating out, we're drinking out. Look at Instagram. It's all about food. It's food-based travel. It's food-based, this and that. And so we just love to eat out. But the truth is, our population here can't support the number of restaurants we have. Many people, I don't eat out on Saturday night, usually not Friday night either. I eat out on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays when the restaurant is and most of them are not full, and I know you don't have to be full every night as long as you're doing really well on weekends, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I don't own restaurants, I don't know the financials, but I know that they're not all busy. And what happens is, so to your question, what's your favorite restaurant? Second most popular question to me is, hey Doug, I'm going out with some friends, what's new? And that's how people eat. It's not what's good, it's what's new. And so they want to go to the next new place and the next new place. And so think about it. If all people are doing is going to the next new place, those are the only really busy restaurants. And also, servers, bartenders, managers, they're doing the same thing. They're leaving and going to the next new thing because they know they're going to make some money in the first 6 months. They're going to move on to the next place, and that's not good for anybody. And you can't just pay them more. I mean, you can't just keep throwing money at employees because, the margins are so thin with restaurants and all that. So, too many restaurants. It's true. And some are closing. I mean, but restaurants always close. Restaurants always open. They always close. But yeah, I think we're seeing kind of a speed up of that. As much as I hate to say it. Hi. Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. No. Filipino food is something that we don't have, and we're getting a restaurant soon in Lakewood. Tai is relocating, and we're getting a nice Filipino restaurant over there. So that's good. This whole small plate thing that Doug Katz is doing. Small plates is funny. We have been struggling in this town. If you go to any other place, tapas and small plates, and you just, look at this menu. Doug Katz, it's hard to see, I know. 30 different little things, from small to big, not too big. Salt does a great job with small plates. But I think, it's still the exception. People want a pound of meat, a pound of mashed potatoes, and asparagus. I know, we love craft beer, but the macros still sell 90% of the beer. I think we tend to live in a bubble. I do, I know, but the truth of the matter is, people still tend to stick to their meat and potatoes. But small plates, I think, is a trend that we need more of. Places where you can just pop in, have 1, 2, 3 things, share it with some friends, and move on. Who's got the best question? Go ahead.
What are your memories of places like the Watermark, Tangerine Farley's, Piccolo Mondo, Bank Street?
So it's interesting, the whole Flats thing is obviously remarkable. I mean, Watermark was a restaurant right where Collision Bend is now. Pamela Waterman was the chef, I think, and the whole Flats thing was fun. It's this whole moving the decks moving the chairs on the deck of the Titanic thing sometimes. We're like, this place was hot now, and then the warehouse district came around, and so everybody ran up the hill, and then Tremont, and everyone went over here, and Ohio City, and then you got the Crocker Parks, Legacies, Pinecrest, all those things. So that's also the kind of undercurrent theme beneath all of this is these kind of hot neighborhoods. Fortunately, thankfully, when I started, you wouldn't go to Ohio City. I mean, you would go there to slum it, ABC Tavern, or, I think it wasn't until Sam opened Bear Market, where we're like, oh, wow, you went to the West Side Market. There was obviously on Market Avenue with Great Lakes and Kika, and then Flying Fig. But, I mean, to see what happened in Ohio City over the past, 10, 12 years is just remarkable. I mean, to see a whole neighborhood just kind of, spring to life. I just wrote about a place called Shula that you might know. Oh, look at how cool that menu is. So these people sent this to me. It's not here, it's New York. When I was doing some research on this, they have a collection of 10,000 menus, and you can buy them all. And so they sent me that one. I love it. I was saying something about Ohio City. Shula. So, these people are very smart people. They open up on Chagrin Boulevard, as you know. To call them the Chipotle version of Indian would be doing a disservice to Shula, because the food is spectacular. They do it the right way. They make it from scratch. But they're very smart people. They own, a dozen or more, 5 guys. They're all business grads from Case, I believe. And so they are very meticulous about what they do. And they opened 5 years ago in Orange, and then they wanted to open, I think, 2 in, they have 4 more, both outstate. So number 5 is going to, of all places, Ohio City. And that just would have been, unthinkable 15 years ago. And, but that's it. It's nice to see that people are, I hope, moving back to town. Living in neighborhoods like Detroit Shoreby, Ohio City, Tremont, Cleveland Heights, Lakewood. I've always been kind of, I joke that I don't go, to Westlake or to whatever. I will go as far as, I have a kind of a formula. The farther I drive, the more interesting and compelling the place has to be. It's that simple. I will drive anywhere for great food. One quick one from you.
Yeah, this trend of building your own plate out of 1,000 options or choices, does that annoy you when you see that going on, like the Barrio thing?
It annoys me a lot. Well, here's what's funny. Yelp, I love reading Yelp reviews, you might know. And, I'm not saying Yelp has no purpose. It does. But my favorite is when these people go to Barrio and they order a taco, which typically consists of, like 2 tablespoons of hot meat. And then they proceed to, pour on the guacamole, the sour cream, the cheese, the cold ingredients, and then they bitch about a cold taco. I mean, it's like... chefs obviously hate that, because chefs know what goes together and what doesn't go together. They are designing these things, thinking them through. I know they tend to be different restaurants. If there's a chef, you're probably not checking things off a box to order it. It's Happy Dog, it's something like that. But I think they're fun. I think people love doing that. The whole check-off thing is fun. You're in control. And there's probably not going to be any mistakes with your menu, but, I don't love it. I mean, I never really had a great meal that way. Not that I can think of. Anybody have a great meal that way? Barrio? Thanks.